Hi, I'm Emma. I stood in his bedroom. She read his messages. Let's get into it. The silence in our apartment was so heavy it felt like a physical weight pressing against my eardrums, suffocating the air I was trying to breathe. I stood in the master bedroom, my hands still trembling as I clutched the crumpled receipt from a luxury hotel in the city center, a receipt I had found hidden inside the lining of his winter coat, a coat he claimed he was donating to charity the day before. On the back of the receipt, written in his distinct, looping handwriting, was a date, 3 months ago, the night I was supposed to be celebrating our 3rd anniversary with him, the night he was supposed to be at the restaurant I had booked for us. Instead, he was there. With her. And the worst part wasn't just that he had been cheating on me, it was the sheer banality of the lie he had told me an hour before I found the receipt. He had looked me in the eyes, his expression one of that practiced, gentle concern I had come to know so well, and asked, "You sure you don't want to talk about work? You seem really stressed lately." He had been worried about my stress while he was planning a secret life with someone else. I dropped the receipt on the bed, watching it flutter like a dead bird, and the world didn't spin or crash, it just shattered into a million tiny, unrecognizable pieces. But this relationship didn't end in a single moment. It ended slowly, over time. And to understand how we got here, you need to know how it began. It started in a coffee shop on a rainy Tuesday in November, a place that smelled of roasted beans and wet wool. His name was Julian, and he was a graphic designer with a laugh that seemed to vibrate through the floorboards, a man who noticed the little things. I was 22, just starting my first real job in marketing, and I felt like I was constantly wading through mud. Julian didn't just make coffee, he made it with a precision that felt like an act of service. We met over a spilled latte, where I was apologizing profusely while he was laughing, offering to wipe the mess with his napkins. We talked for hours about everything and nothing, from our favorite childhood books to our deepest fears of failure. For Julian, I was the person who finally made him feel seen, not just as a worker or a son, but as a creative soul. And for me, Julian was the anchor. We moved in together 6 months later into this very apartment, a space we filled with mismatched furniture and 1,000 shared dreams. We planned a wedding for 2 years out, we talked about buying a house in the suburbs, we talked about having kids. The love we had was genuine, warm, and terrifyingly comfortable. But looking back now, with the benefit of hindsight that feels like a cruel gift, I can see the first cracks. It was small, almost invisible at the time. One evening, about 6 months in, I asked him if he remembered our first date. He paused, his fingers freezing on his coffee cup, and said, "Last year, right?" It was a minor error, a mix-up of seasons, but the way his eyes darted away, the slight flush of panic that crossed his face before he laughed it off as a joke, planted a seed of doubt that I watered with hope. I told myself it was stress, I told myself he was just tired, but the seed had taken root. The deterioration wasn't a landslide, it was a slow erosion, a grinding away of trust that happened over 2 years of marriage. It started with the late nights. Julian's work as a freelance consultant was unpredictable, and he would often disappear for hours, claiming he was at a client meeting or working late on a design portfolio. He would come home smelling faintly of expensive perfume that wasn't mine, a scent that lingered in his clothes for days. I asked him about it once, teasing him, and he brushed it off as a new cologne he was testing for a project, laughing at my lack of fashion sense. Then came the phone addiction. He started taking calls in the other room, turning the ringer off, whispering into the device with a hushed, intimate tone that made my stomach turn. I caught him texting under the table at dinner once, his face lighting up with a smile that I wasn't getting. I confronted him about it, and he got defensive, accusing me of being controlling and insecure, painting me as the paranoid wife who couldn't trust her own husband. "I've given you every reason to trust me," he said, his voice rising, "and you act like I'm a criminal every time I check my phone." We had an argument like that, the kind where we both said things we couldn't take back, where I screamed about the perfume and he screamed about my jealousy. It ended with me storming into the bedroom, him following to apologize, us making up with passionate kisses that felt desperate and hollow. I rationalized it. I told myself everyone needs space, that he was under pressure with his business, that I was being difficult. I ignored the red flags because the blue sky we had built together was so beautiful. I chose hope over reality, telling myself that the good times were enough to cover the bad. We even planned a trip to Italy for our 5th anniversary, a dream vacation we had talked about for years, and I booked the flights, convinced that the trip would fix everything, that the change of scenery would bring Julian back to the man I fell in love with. I was wrong. The trip didn't fix us, it just gave him more time to hide. The betrayal wasn't a sudden explosion, it was a carefully constructed web of lies that had been in place for a year, maybe longer. The woman's name was Elena, and she was a fellow designer who had started as a business partner, a colleague who had become a constant presence in Julian's life. They had been having an affair for 14 months, a secret life that existed in the margins of our marriage. They had met for lunch, they had gone for late-night walks, and they had spent countless hours texting, sharing thoughts and dreams that Julian claimed to have no time for me. The lie was comprehensive. Julian told me Elena was a distant cousin he was helping with a family legal matter, then he changed the story to her being a mentor he was mentoring in the industry. He created a fake social media account, a persona that he used to interact with her, and he even had a second phone, a burner device he kept in his car that I never once checked. I was so blinded by my desire to believe in us that I never looked. The unraveling began not with the discovery of an affair, but with a financial discrepancy. Julian had been siphoning money from our joint savings account, claiming it was for a business investment that never materialized. I found the bank statements because I was trying to pay for the Italy trip, and I saw $30,000 gone, transferred to an account with a name that wasn't mine and wasn't his. When I confronted him, he panicked, and in his panic, he slipped. He admitted the money was for a new venture, but when I pressed him on the details, he blurted out, "Elena is helping me with the marketing for it." That was the crack in the armor. I realized then that Elena was the reason for the money, the reason for the lies, the reason for the perfume. I spent the next week gathering evidence, watching him sleep, listening to his phone buzz in the dead of night. I found the hotel receipt, the text messages, the photos of them laughing together at a restaurant we used to love. The moment I found the receipt in his coat was the moment the illusion died completely. The affair wasn't just physical, it was emotional, a complete replacement of our marriage with a new, secret relationship. He had been living 2 lives, one where he was the devoted husband, and one where he was a lover to someone else, and he had been managing the transition so perfectly that I was the only one who didn't know the world had already ended. The aftermath was a chaotic storm of emotions that left me breathless. For the first few days, I was in a state of shock, walking through my own life like a ghost. I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat, I just stared at the ceiling, trying to process the magnitude of what I had lost. Julian came home that night, expecting the usual greeting, and I confronted him with every piece of evidence I had gathered. The look on his face was a mix of shame and cold calculation. He didn't deny it. He just stood there, his hands in his pockets, and said, "It's not what you think," a phrase that made my blood boil. He tried to explain that it was a mistake, that he was confused, that he loved me but he had lost his way. He begged for forgiveness, promising to go to therapy, promising to cut contact with Elena immediately. He even offered to sign over the house to me, to pay me a massive settlement, anything to make it stop. I told him to get out. I threw his bags on the porch and slammed the door in his face. I called my best friend, Sarah, and then my mom. My mom was devastated, her voice cracking as she asked how this could happen to her baby girl. Sarah, on the other hand, was furious. She told me I was a fool for letting him stay in the house, that I was weak, that I should have kicked him out years ago. "You were married to a liar, not a person," she told me, her words stinging more than the pain in my chest. I felt like I was drowning in the opinions of others. Then came the worst part, the silence. I went to a mutual friend, Mark, who was a close friend of both of us. He told me that Julian had been struggling with depression, that he had been lonely, that maybe I was the one who was too demanding. He suggested that maybe the marriage was the problem, not Julian's cheating. That was the moment I felt the loneliest I had ever been. A friend of mine, someone I had trusted, was validating the man who had destroyed my life. I realized then that the betrayal wasn't just by Julian, it was by everyone who tried to minimize what happened. I moved into a hotel, sleeping on a stiff bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out who I was without him. I thought about calling him back, thinking that maybe, if I just tried harder, if I just forgave him, we could fix it. But then I remembered the smell of that perfume, the look in his eyes when he lied, and I knew it was over. There was no going back. The trust was gone, and without it, the love was just a memory of something that never truly existed in the way I thought it did. To understand what happened, you have to look at it from both sides. From my perspective, I was the victim of a calculated deception. I loved Julian with my whole heart, and I gave him everything I had. I was patient, I was forgiving, I was supportive. I ignored the signs because I wanted to believe in the love we had. I missed the red flags because I was blinded by the love I thought was mutual. I was naive, yes, but I was not stupid. I saw the truth eventually, and the pain of that realization was unbearable. But from Julian's perspective, he was a man who felt trapped. He told himself that our marriage was a cage, that he had lost himself in the routine of being a husband. He rationalized his affair as a way to feel alive again, to feel desired and appreciated in a way he didn't feel at home. He told himself that Elena was the one who understood him, that she was his soulmate, and that I was just a partner. He justified the lies as necessary to protect Elena and to avoid hurting me, a twisted logic that allowed him to sleep at night. He wasn't a monster in his own mind, he was a man trying to find happiness, even if it meant destroying the life he had built. He believed that he could have it all, that he could keep his wife and find his love elsewhere, and that he could manage it without anyone getting hurt. He was wrong. He hurt everyone, including himself. But the tragedy is that he saw it that way, that he convinced himself he was the one in pain, that he was the victim of circumstance. And for a brief moment, when he looked at me with those sad, pleading eyes, I almost believed him. I almost forgave him. But the truth is, he chose to hurt me. He chose to lie to me. He chose to betray me, again and again, every time he picked up his phone, every time he went to dinner with Elena, every time he told me a lie. He made a choice, and that choice has consequences that we both have to live with. So, guilty or not? Is Julian purely guilty, a villain who betrayed his wife for a fleeting moment of excitement? Or is the situation more complicated, a tragedy of two people who drifted apart until one of them decided to cross the line? Is I blameless, a naive wife who should have seen the signs? Or am I complicit in my own downfall by ignoring the red flags, by staying in a relationship that was already dead? I see both sides. I see the man who felt trapped and tried to find a way out in the worst possible way. I see the woman who loved deeply and got hurt in return. But in the end, the betrayal is undeniable. The lie was deliberate. The affair was intentional. The money was stolen. Julian is guilty. He made a choice, and he had to live with the consequences of that choice. But the question is, can the betrayed person ever truly move on? Can the trust be rebuilt, or is the damage permanent? The answer is not simple. Love, lies, and hard choices. You decide. I want to hear from you. What do you think? Is the betrayer guilty, or is there always a reason behind the betrayal? Have you ever been in a relationship where you ignored the signs, where you stayed too long because you were too hopeful? Or have you been the one who made the choice to leave, the one who had to walk away from someone you loved because the truth was just too heavy to carry? I want to know your stories, your verdicts, your hard choices. This is a safe space for you to share your experiences, to find comfort in knowing you are not alone in the chaos of love and betrayal. If you found this story compelling, if it resonated with you or made you think, please hit that subscribe button. We have so many more stories coming, from long-distance relationships that fell apart to friendships that turned into something else entirely. We explore the complexities of human connection, the pain of betrayal, and the resilience of the human heart. Don't forget to like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Until next time, remember that you are stronger than you think, and even in the darkest moments, there is always a way forward. Stay safe, stay true to yourself, and we'll see you in the next one.